Hi, everyone. I'm Jenise Fryatt.
And I'm Marianne West.
Today, we're going to be envisioning the ideal sustainable home, but starting with an existing home. So hang on if you're interested in tips to make your home a lot more green and sustainable. We're going to be sharing links and talking about all kinds of stuff that relate to envisioning the ideal sustainable home.
Absolutely. And just for those who don't know us, that we are the co-host of the Sustainable Living podcast. So we're going to publish this as a podcast. And we probably also put it up on the YouTube channel. So later on, we're going to open up seats for anybody to come on and join and share their vision. So just, your pretty face might be on YouTube.
Yay. Well, to get started, we always like to start the envisioning discussions with a brainstorm. Just throw everything out there in the kitchen sink. Don't limit ourselves. So let's start envisioning what the ideal sustainable home would be.
So for me, the ideal home wouldn't be very expensive. So you don't spend your whole life working to pay for said home.
Yeah.
And I want it to be big enough that everything I have or want to have can be organized. And I'm not talking about wanting to have tons of stuff, but I have a lot of different hobbies which require material. And I know there's this idea of get rid what you don't use for a while, but there are things sometimes you cycle back to, and then having spaces where it can be organized. I want it to be not poisoning me. So
thank you.
Not toxic.
Yes. I mean, I'm sorry, that's bottom line for any home. Okay, any home. But
yeah. For sure. I mean, non-toxic.
Yeah.
I want it to be warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money achieving that goal, or not just money, but really resources in my environment.
Yeah.
And I could go on, but I want to give you a chance to say something too.
Okay, well, those are all things I would have said as well. Mm-hmm. I would add, I would like it to be somewhat self-sufficient, or at least be plugged into a less centralized methods of obtaining the things that I need. So that be it energy, be it food, whatever, I'd like it to be, yes, I'm producing some of it, but I'm also what I don't need, I'm getting from places that are in my local community.
Okay, so you want it close. So I wanted self-cleaning. How's that?
I love it. Awesome. That's who would not want that? That rocks. Okay, self-cleaning. Ideal home. I want it to be filled with love. I want it to be warm and inviting. I want it to be a central gathering place for my friends and my family.
Yeah, sounds good.
I want it to be cheerful too. Cheerful and uplifting, make me feel good and make it feel like a sanctuary, some place that I can escape from the rat race or whatever.
So beautiful too. It needs to be, beautiful, inviting.
Beauty, so important.
Absolutely. I like a lot of light in my spaces. So I definitely want it to be having a lot of natural light.
Yes.
And into middle of a green space if possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? I would like it to have access to, I want to be able to see the stars at night.
There you go. But that like being central and seeing the stars, it means needing to have a community which doesn't turn on too many lights.
Right.
So you can see those stars.
Right.
Yeah. So anything else which comes to your vision right now? I mean, there's
how about well, of course, we talk, ways to create your own, make it easy to create, or not create, but grow or produce your own food. That might be something outside of your house, but also inside too in the winter, in cold places where you can't grow in the winter. Anything else? I want it to be comfortable for my dogs.
There you go. I like it to be, you already kind of a little bit mentioned community. So I like it to be close to community, and I want to be able to go places without needing a car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's ideal. Yeah. I love that.
I want to have clean air around my home, and
Yes.
especially inside my home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want it to be super comfortable and
Yes.
functional and easy to deal with anything you do in a home. So for me, that means lots of work areas where you can do a lot of different things. You know, a kitchen which is small enough to be functional so that you can get to everything, but big enough so that if you have 2 big pots in it, it's not full, which my kitchen right now is.
Yeah. You know that, and it's so funny. Those are simple things, you know, but how many houses have that? That's those are great tips. Really good
Well,
ideas.
you know, I think I want it to be suitable for everybody's needs because they're not necessarily the same. You know, there is like, I want a more spacious kitchen because I do big things. I use big pots, I use big bowls. But then there's the idea of a very small kitchen where you just have everything in arm's reach. And I think that's for people which are not processing, you know, 40 pounds of cabbage at a time, or you know, stuff like that. So it's kind of suitable, or said it can be changeable, you know, so maybe something where you can adjust it to your own needs. So you know, a kitchen could be opened up into a different room, become bigger. But if you don't want it, if you want it small space, then that could be closed off.
Oh, that's brilliant. That like a little Lego modules for your home, you know, that would grow with you as you grow and your family grows or changes. I love that.
And talking about family growing, I think now so many people are in a situation where you take care of children and of parents if you're in said middle space. And I like it to be in a way that extended family could live or community could live. So instead of everybody having their own house, said, you know, you could have a house where there are distinct different apartments almost, you know, so that you can have your own space, but you can be in community. And that,
Marianne,
yeah,
that's brilliant. That, oh my God. And that's something I totally forgot, but that is something I would really want in my, oh, there he is. There's Brad. He was having trouble getting on. Let me get him in here. Okay. Because I don't want to forget what you just said. Okay. It's really good.
And I'm going to let my dog in because she's making a lot of noise. So.
Okay. All right. Here comes Brad. I see your avatar, Brad, but I don't see you. Oh, here he comes. There you are.
Sorry about that.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, well, you missed our first 10 minutes. Maybe we should extend this at least 5 more minutes so Brad can have a chance to brainstorm with us. I'm just going to summarize some of the things we talked about on our brainstorming of all the things we want. And if I'm going to miss some, so chime in, Marianne. I'm going to start with the last thing Marianne said, which just gets me so excited when I hear stuff like this. But she said a home that where you could have kind of like your extended family where they would have their own kind of apartment, but they would still be somewhat connected to you. And it brings to mind, I think maybe mention community as well. I love that idea of a community of people that are choosing to live together on purpose and have, you know, similar values or ideas that they want to accomplish together. I love that too. So, and we also talked about, you know, a non-toxic home, right? Mm-hmm. A home that grows with you, that's kind of, you know, you can change around to suit your family and you as you grow.
My main cool is a self-cleaning home.
Yes, I love that. Cool in the summer, warm in the winter. Has a homey, attractive, uplifting feel, a gathering place for your family and friends. What else?
Close to transportation.
Yes.
If so you don't have to always use a car. Yeah, I think we probably said more, but our brains don't hold information for more than 5 minutes. So
No.
go, Brad.
Yeah, what do you say?
I also like the idea of being integrated with nature, so that you're somehow integrated into the mountains or the forests, or you're by the water, so it's not just miles of endless urban sprawl.
Oh God, yes.
And there was something that I read a long time ago in a book called The Pattern Language, and they talked about older communities like European communities, or even when the United States first started and you had your work and your home very close together. You might have a little shop and an apartment upstairs, and how that changed the dynamic of the community and your work. And then you could bring family in, you could bring friends in. So there wasn't this huge disconnect between I live here, but then I spend an hour driving somewhere else where I don't really know anyone in the neighborhood, and don't really care about that city. And I go work there, and then I come home to a place I care about, and kind of connecting all the things you do and all the places that you care about and all the people that you interact with should be closer together.
Yeah, I grew up in a community like that. It was an old town, like 1,000 years old or something like that. But now city planning is actually coming back to that. And actually for myself, I like the idea to be integrated into green, but not everybody has that mindset. So I actually like for big cities, like I'm in a big city in San Diego, and the trend is now to make downtown really tall, and so the newest building going up is 44 stories, but they're actually integrating green space on different levels. So it's still integrated. There is a park-like thing on the 5th floor, I want to say, that they have some open space there. And you could have green balconies and stuff like that, because, if we all keep sprawling out, then we have no nature left. And not everybody wants to be that close to nature. I mean, there are people which go crazy if there's a bug in the house, and then but it's the principle you were saying. They're developing shops in the bottom and restaurants and so forth, and then living space on top, because I think a lot of being deserted spaces, when during the days the living area nobody is there, and during the night the business areas are completely empty, and it just invites unhealthy elements type of a thing. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And any other brainstorm things you want to share, Brad or Marianne, you guys? Because we have gone over our 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. The allotted time is over.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Brad suggested, not that we can't go over, we're very flexible here, but Brad suggested an outline, and I really liked it, where we talked maybe first about the inside of the house, the outside of the house, and the neighborhood. And Marianne, if you have any other topics within that realm that you want to add, please do.
So I think just to clarify, we kind of decided to concentrate today on homes which are already built. So we are not talking about what would you do if you had unlimited resources and no building codes and no building inspectors and you could do whatever. So we are talking about having a typical standard American built home, and what can you do with that home to make it closer to our vision of having low energy cost, clean air to breathe in and out, and also other things we already mentioned.
Yep. So let's start with the inside of the house.
Yeah. So who wants to start? I have a whole list.
I have a couple.
Yeah. So just to add to what you were saying, I was kind of calling this section the Earthship Delusion, because I think, a lot of people get very interested in this topic. We all want to go away and live in an Earthship in the desert, is kind of my first thought. And I always see pictures of Earthships and tiny homes, and maybe someday I'll have an opportunity to live in a fully integrated community that's built green or sustainable from the ground up. But for most of us, I was just looking this up, Most recent figure I could find from 2009 was that there are 91 million single detached family homes and mobile homes in the United States. And I think there's 130 million total housing units, so including apartments, condos, etc. But, and how many Earthships are there?
5?
Probably, I have no idea, but under, 5.
Well,
Under
for anybody who
1,000.
doesn't know what an Earthship is, just quickly, an Earthship is supposed to be like a completely kind of self-sustaining home. It's built normally with tires that you have kind of pounded in a bunch of earth, and then it's structured so that it captures. This is what I know, and if anything I'm missing out, please feel free to pipe in. But it captures water so that it makes its own water. You can grow stuff in it. It has passive ways of capturing the sun and heating the inside. Anything else I missed?
I think that's pretty good. But I think it's fully self-sustained, like a little island where you can live even a harsh part of the desert and capture your own water and recycle water, grow your own food.
Yeah.
It's kind of a model. If we were starting from scratch and we had unlimited resources, probably what we would want to do. But there are 91 million of these other homes that it's kind of hard to, if you just walk away from them, or even if you hit the lottery and just knock it down and throw it in the landfill, that's not really the right thing for us to do.
No, and on the Earthship note, I'm taking my PDC right now with Larry Santoyo at the Permaculture Academy in the LA area, and don't mention Earthships to him because he will just go on a tirade about how why the heck do we need to be using tires anyway? You can do the same thing without tires, and tires, as we know, can be very toxic. So,
well, I think the tires came from, there was this huge amount going into landfill to figure out what else can we do with it. But, to get back to the topic, basically what we're talking about is like your dream doesn't have to wait. There are so many people going, oh, once I get my land and once I do this, then I can be green, then I can live all of that. And basically what we are saying, no, you can do it right now where you are. And I think what you said is huge, Brad. It's like if we have those existing structures which have all kinds of energy already embedded in them. There is the wood which was brought there, is the cement, like whatever it is, all of that stuff took a lot of resources and energy, and to just dismantle it and throw it away is a very non-green thing to do, even if afterwards you go and you do cork and bamboo and so in things you just had a huge environmental impact by getting rid of all that stuff and throwing it into landfill. Plus most of us just don't have the money to do that.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too. I think that separates, there are a lot of people who would like to be more sustainable, who are very interested in it, who are trying to just make their house payment every month.
Right.
And I think they look at a lot of our blogs and articles and think, oh yeah, that's for you people who have money and free time, but I have no access to that, and I have no possibility of making those changes in my life. And that's just not true.
Right.
They're the $100 homestead and the trailer park mama and some of these blogs that came out about people moving into a sustainable lifestyle on a smaller budget than I can conceivably imagine living on, right? So just the mindset of how do we take wherever we're at today, bloom where you're planted, and move forward in a more sustainable
way.
Right.
And that's something obviously that we've all done. None of us have built our homes from scratch to make them perfectly sustainable. So let's start with the indoors. I'll share, I found some really cool links today just about simple things that you can do to make, for instance, to warm your house in the winter. Just putting heavy curtains over your windows at night, making sure your windows are open, those south-facing windows are open. And, it's wonderful if you have tile, because then you get that radiant heat. The sun beaming down on the floor helps to heat up your home. Those things, how about those sausage dog things? Have you ever seen those? They're just a piece of Yeah, a piece of material that's kind of stuffed. You stick it at the bottom of your door to keep the drafts from coming in.
Or you can do the same with a very heavy curtain, which is longer than the door itself, so it actually trails on the floor.
Yeah, and that's
then you can have it in front of the sides. Like like weather stripping is supposed to shut off the windows and the door, right? So our house is very old, and the door shapeshift, so they get bigger and smaller. So at some time of the year, if I have a whole bunch of weather stripping on it, I can't even close the door anymore. And then at other times there is like this airspace, so the curtain in front of it is solving that problem.
Oh yeah, I mean, and look how simple that is. Costs nothing, you know. There's just all kinds of things like that you can do. And I'm looking for my article that talks about. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I really like this. They just talk about thinking about outside walls. You know, the walls that are between you and the outside. You can take special care with those. I guess in the Norwegian homes, they actually will use big tapestries on those walls to help insulate. They'll also put bookshelves on those walls. Anything you can do to create more create more of an insulation between those outside walls and they help to keep your house warmer. And then there were some other tips. Oh, one of the ones that really sticks out to me is you want to have clean air in your home, right? We do have indoor pollution. Well, plants. There are certain plants, and I'll find a link to an article because there's a bunch of articles on this. Yeah. But there's particular plants that are really good for cleaning your air.
Yeah, like
and
spider
so just
plants.
And help to beautify your home, which again was one of the things we were talking about in our brainstorm, the ideal home we would like to have.
There was actually a case in San Diego where they built a new office building and they insulated it so well that there was no air exchange. And people got sick, sick to the, who were working in there got sick to the point of having to be carried out in the ambulance. And so they were looking at this and, had all these plans of, we have to tear it down or do this and that. And then somebody came up, let's put plants. And the plants totally took care of the situation.
Yeah, I'm sure they do that, but they also probably make people feel better, not just because of the cleaning they do, but just you have that energy. You're bringing some nature into your room. It makes you feel better.
But in that case, they needed air to breathe, which didn't land them in the ambulance. Yeah.
So it's vital too in many cases.
Yeah, and I think one of the things people talk about, when they start to learn about green and volatile organic chemicals, things that are off-gassing in their house, they want to move into they have a desire to move into a safer house or a cleaner house. But at least everything I've been reading, most of the VOC off-gassing has the major part is done within about the first year. And I think carpet, the longest they've measured carpet off-gassing is 4 or 5 years. So if you're living in an older house,
it's done.
There's probably not a lot of off-gas. Yeah, it's already happened. And if you have concerns, open the window, make sure you have airflow, because a lot of that stuff you can just keep moving it along. But one of the things, just going back to what you said earlier, how do we use things as long as we can? Because they've already off-gassed, they're already paid for. You don't have to find a way to recycle them or reuse them. And my uncle and I were at a thrift store the other day, and we found this book probably from the 80s. It was like a Reader's Digest book about that thick. And it was like an infographic book that showed how to fix everything in your house. Toaster, hair dryer, coffee maker, right? And it just shows you how to open them up and fix them, replace a switch. Today, it doesn't even occur to most people that those things can be fixed. They just right in the trash. And it's not cost effective, even a lot of times, to fix them. But that's something that we've tried to start doing, is buying things that are fixable, paying a little bit more for something that's going to last, something that has parts that are repairable, and maybe even I don't want to have to buy a coffee maker every year. is there a craft handmade type of system that we can buy that's just going to last for a long time, even if it's a little more expensive? If I don't have to buy one every year, it's going to end up being, better in the long run.
Yeah.
Or even doing away with machines. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my espresso machine. Okay, I don't want to be without it. But coffee, you can have a filter, a reusable filter in water and pour it in. Or as a French press. But even there are movable parts which can break. So like in Europe, you have some milliliter filters. It's just like a cone, and you set it on top of any kind of pot, and then and you can use paper filter, which are not reusable, or that you can make them out of cloth and reuse them. I wanted to go back to the non-toxic home, because there are things we do on a regular basis, or not so regular basis, for upkeep, like painting and so forth, where you can choose to introduce more toxins now, even so the old one is off-gassed, or you can go other ways. And a couple of things I really like. One of them is a milk paint. And, they are not as bright in color, but they're actually based in sour milk. That's the base of it. And they're absolutely non-toxic and very beautiful. And they came from Europe, and they're available in the US now too. And another thing I really like is an indoor clay cover on the wall. So it makes, and Jenise was talking about earlier how she wants her home to be inviting and cozy and warm. And the clay, I haven't seen, I have seen in a straw bale house, they had it on the walls, and it was very inviting. And I haven't seen it otherwise besides on pictures, but it always looked very warm, like not stark. And I don't know how long or how durable it is, compared to the high gloss paint we put in our kitchens. I'm assuming it would be more like any kind of natural materials, that you might have to do it a little bit more often. But it's definitely an option, and I think it's super beautiful.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I'm going to have to check that out.
I have links to it, so we are definitely going to write up a resource page, and for looking.
Well, and I will find the brand of paint that I got because as soon as I got into my house, which is a modular home, I wanted to do some painting, and I looked around for paint, and I found something that I really like. That the colors are very vibrant, and this is an ecological, eco-friendly paint. So I'll share a link to that once I remember what it was. But those are great tips. I would also share that whenever you can, use renewable resources, find a way. Like I'm really happy we have a wood stove here. I didn't have that in my old house, and living in a mountain climate, it's kind of a big deal to keep your house warm in the winter. So I'm really happy to have my wood stove. And another thing, when you have a wood stove, it can be double duty for you. So heat up your water in the morning when you're heating your house. So
So a couple other things that off-gas, actually, you can find lists of what not to buy because it off-gasses, right? So dryer sheets, pretty much anything you bring home that you can smell in the house later that's not
pure essential oil.
Right? Yeah, you can smell it in the house, means it's off-gassing. New furniture off-gasses. Electronics have a lot of off-gassing. And I think to go back to something that you said, I put this item at the end of my agenda, but maybe it should be at the beginning. A message to my kids and younger people that I know is, don't get caught up in the I need a big house, I need all this stuff. Take it from me. If you can learn anything from the years that I am ahead of you, that stuff does not contribute to your life. That stuff ends up breaking, you spend time fixing it, you get a great stereo system, it breaks, you go out and earn more money to replace it, then you have to find a way to recycle it. Question one, do you even need it?
Yeah, and that, I just wanted to chime in again with your comment about carpet and off-gassing with that. When I first got into this house, we moved here about almost 3 years ago, the carpet was just horrendous. That was the one thing for sure that I was going to change as soon as I got in here. That the people that lived here before had 8 dogs and they had the run of the house. So this year I really wanted to do it. We don't have the money. So we decided to get it cleaned. We got somebody really good who did an excellent job. It cost us a little more, but now, after especially hearing that I have to wait 4 years for new carpet to off gas, I'm going to try and keep this carpet as long as I possibly can. The person who cleaned it, it's like a new carpet. So I'm so glad I didn't get new carpet.
Yeah. Well, it said off-gassing is true for carpet, which is not made from natural material. So you can get carpets made out of wool and, other hemp and other fibers, which won't off-gas. You probably pay a lot more for it at this point because it's, it used to be so materials which used to be used for this kind of thing. And then we came up with the synthetics and they become so much cheaper. So now it's in the luxury department. But I think we might be circling back to, it becoming more normal to be able to find wool carpets or, other kind of material works, which kind of goes right into with insulation, which I found a lot of insulation made out of non-toxic materials, which are available now. And I was actually surprised that there's a cotton type of insulation made from old blue jeans, and even Home Depot carries it. So I don't think you can get it in the stores. You have to order it online. And then there's, wool obviously is it's a product used for insulation. But in Europe, I don't know if they're available in the US, but they have a whole bunch of really interesting insulation made out of hemp. And, since we have that weird hemp relationship here, but I think it's Colorado, changing. So hey, you're going into...
I'm not sure we're allowed to use it for insulation yet, but we can do other things.
It makes you feel better too. It makes you feel warmer. Yes.
Yeah. So I downloaded something I found. This is a move-in certified, green certified, and there's probably a bunch of stuff like this, but there are certifications starting where people will come in and as part of a home inspection, if you're buying a new home or you're trying to sell your home. This was almost a 6-page list of things to check. So if the house is in a cold climate, is it oriented that the side is the most glass facing the south, right? Deck is made of composite recycled material. Operable shutters are providing window shading. So I'm going to add this to the link for the resource page, but this was just a great list of things to kind of read through and kind of brainstorm. What kind of improvements can I make on my house without doing any major, there are, as you were talking about earlier, there's a ton of simple stuff that probably won't cost a lot of other money, but this was called Move-In Certified Green Certified.
Great. Right. Yeah. Thanks for adding that in. I noticed on your list, Brad, you had an idea about increasing options for increasing suburban density. Want to share a little about that?
Sure. So, me moving into a tiny house probably is not going to happen right now, but adding tiny homes onto an existing suburban lot is something that's becoming an option more and more. And we've been working with our county and our city here for probably the last year to look at what regulations need to be changed to allow that. It goes kind of hand in hand with something called an ADU, so an accessory dwelling unit. You want to add like a in-laws quarters in the back of your house. Right now, even out in the country where we live, it's extremely restrictive to add an ADU. But when you talk to the county commissioners, they love the idea. It adds density without them having to pay for more miles of roads and water pipes that they don't have budget for. But because of maybe some older thinking, the laws are very restrictive. So we've started to get actually some changes made, and they've just done their first approval for what an ADU would look like. You have to have a certain amount of land. There's certain restrictions on the ADU. But even if I can't go live in a tiny house, I'm looking at the possibility of adding a tiny house onto my property for guests. I mean, we've almost always had a friend living with us who just needed a place to stay transitionally. They don't necessarily want to live in the bedroom right next to us, and we would like some privacy too. But building an ADU is expensive, but you can get a tiny house now for even in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. And as long as there's approval from the local government, you can add that type of more permaculture style living onto your existing property.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That term, increasing suburban density, that idea, or any kind of density, I have to just chime in real quick. A lot of the kids now, my kids being one example, it's really hard to find housing that they can afford when all they can get is these jobs that pay so little. So more and more of them are opting to get a house and share it together. And unfortunately, I've found out in this last year that a lot of places don't allow that in their zoning ordinances. And so hopefully that's something that we will start to change, because, we just don't live in that kind of world anymore where we can all have one big house for each of us. And obviously it's not sustainable.
Right.
Yeah. And what we've talked about before is it's not even the lifestyle that we want, because when we find that we can have friends and family living closer, that's the kind of lifestyle that seems to be more how we're designed to live. But the county thought they were going to get a lot of pushback on ADUs and tiny houses, and we've had 3 meetings over the course of maybe 6 months, and people have come out in strong support of it. Even some of the people they thought would be against it, who have maybe some of the nicer homes and nicer properties, because what they said is, I'm getting older. I don't want to lose my house. My kids could move into my house. I could move into a cottage in the back. I don't want to have to move into a nursing home before it's really time. If I can stay on my property with my family, that's much better. That was one side. Another side was, my kids grew up here. They went off to Denver for college. They've got a degree. They cannot find housing. They're not in a career type professional job. They can't move back and live here, even in the country. They either can't afford it, or there's just no housing in their price range. So the type of support, it seems like the sentiment has really been changing. So I think they were concerned about maybe impacting property values 10, 20 years ago, but now those same people are more concerned with their quality of life, the quality of their parents' lives, the quality of their kids' lives. And I think that's really what's been changing the mindset.
That's beautiful.
Here.
Wonderful to hear good news.
Yeah, I think it's economic too. I just went to a kind of a city planning influencing general plan of the city meeting yesterday. And the same theme came up. Said we do have kids which can't really find good jobs, that we have parents possibly, or friends or relatives, and then in our city there's no more open space to build. It's a small city surrounded by other cities, which really everything flows together into the big San Diego, and you can't go out and find another lot. They are all already built on. So the only way to add to some would be to add. And some, like I'm on a sort of an acre. So for an urban place, that's a big acreage, so you could put some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there anything else we want to add to the indoor ideal sustainable home?
Well, I do want to add that insulation, I think, is huge, because that's something you can do to really lower your energy footprint. And even if you have a flat roof, there's insulation you can put on the outside of your roof to help with either cooling or warming, because energy is one of our other topics, how to reduce our footprints there, because most of it is being sourced in a way which is not also environmentally friendly. And I had a couple of others, but that's good.
Okay, well, good. Those are good points to bring up. Now let's move on to the outside. What would we do to make our outside more the outside of the house sustainable?
Well, so you mentioned that in certain countries they use very large rugs on the walls that get hot or cold insulation. And before we moved from California, we had some neighbors that on those same walls on the outside that got hot built basically a living wall. So about 2 feet away from the wall, they built lattice and trained vines up there so that basically the sun shone on the vines all day, and there was an air gap of about 1.5 feet where that wall that generally would get very warm and kept it hard to cool the house, the sun wouldn't even hit the wall. So I'll start there.
Good start. Which could be achieved with shade class on our short term too. You know, if you and yeah, it's like using mechanical ways to heat and cool before going into installing another air conditioning unit, obviously. So in that sense, like to paint your roof white if you're in Florida or sometimes in, you know, California or any hot climate, that would really help too, to keep your space cooler.
Yeah. So, and that reminds me of a trip that we took to Bermuda, and all of the roofs in Bermuda were painted white with lime paint or something. Reason for that is that in Bermuda they had no source of fresh water. All of their water was rainwater captured from the roofs. So almost as soon as the island became colonized, they had this whole system of painting your roof white, which kept it cool. And they painted it with some type of lime paint that cleaned the water as it hit the roof. And then everyone there had a cistern.
Yes.
Which is, you know, I've never seen anything like that in the U.S. And the question is, why not? Why isn't the whole country covered with white roofs with lime paint and cisterns catching rainwater? What a wonderful idea.
Yeah, this is some which is kind of both indoor and outdoor. And we didn't even mention it in envisioning. Like ideally, I would want my home plumbed for gray water use, you know, so that I don't have to do any retrofitting, but that's some which can usually be done some areas easier than others. If you're on a slab, it's sometimes hard to get the bathrooms to go to the outside, but the washer. So in areas where we have drought, like in Southern California, to use every water several times and build it into the infrastructure of the house really would help. And then that helps to green the outside and gives that ambience of looking out and seeing green instead of,
You know what you're reminding me of is Brad Lancaster, and I'm sure you get Brad Lancaster's videos, and he is, for those that haven't seen them, he's a gray water expert and a water conservation expert and a hysterical and engaging speaker. But, you know, when you talk about we can't all move to an Earthship, when he talks about moving into Arizona, I think they bought a $30,000 house or $20,000 house in an older neighborhood that was falling apart. And that was the house that they started in where he really developed his gray water expertise. And he's got 2 books out that give you information on really how to convert almost any kind of existing home layout to use gray water, right? Also the calculations, how much, and there's one of them.
I have another one too. Book. I saw him at a talk he was doing, and he did some workshops in San Diego. And you're right, he's super engaging. It's definitely somebody everybody should check out. And you know what, Brad also did some, which we talked about earlier about community. He totally built community in his area and changed the whole neighborhood. And by starting with simple things like water harvesting, and they did curb cuts to allow the area to get more hydrated, but they also planted a whole bunch of native plants which give crops. So they created a livelihood for neighbors. The neighborhood he moved into was one of the more depressed, you know, like not so well-to-do neighborhoods. So they created a whole bunch of livelihoods out of, you know, what all started in water harvesting. So that's super amazing.
Interesting. Isn't it funny how they're not separate? Right. You know, the water harvesting and permaculture, that it's 1 + 1 = 3 if you do it with your community. It's not a do the water harvesting first and then go do a community building thing later. They are the same thing. Right? What really interesting to think about. We can't hear you. No. That's okay, because I have 3 pages of notes.
Okay, go, Brad, go.
So, there is the Dervais family, about 10 minutes from Los Angeles, and I'm sure everybody that's ever looked at urban permaculture, urban homesteading, their name has popped up or their videos popped up. And they're on a 10th acre lot, so just a very standard suburban home, 10 minutes from Los Angeles, and they are the family that grows 6,000 pounds of food every year on that lot. And I've just got a note here: 400 species of plants, 4,300 pounds of vegetables, 900 eggs from chickens, 1,000 eggs from ducks, 25 pounds of honey, and a huge variety of seasonal fruit. And on top of that, they make $20,000 a year from their front porch sales, and that's all the little kind of LA eateries where the chefs come by in the morning and pick up fresh food from them to go back and make fresh organic food for their little cafe or restaurants. So that's what's possible on a standard home with no changes, just on the outside, converting front yard and backyard landscape to garden.
But I just want to add for little reality checks. So like they all are working on it. It's not some they do on the side. They're I think it's 4 of them, the father and 3 kids, I think, which they are not kids, they're adults. And they're all pretty committed to really working that property. But if you want to homestead, and that's what you do, and also their home was bought a little bit a while back. Like right now, if you buy anything in Southern California, with $20,000, you couldn't make your house payment in a year. So there is like things like that to consider too.
Right. Yeah, and it's taken them quite a while. Like he said, their electric bill is $12 a month, but that's because they went off the grid. They've bought hand crank blenders. They've got solar panels on the roof. Obviously, not a change that you can make overnight, but for us in California, we lived in a neighborhood before we lived here where front yard garden, we would have, the police would have been knocking at our door the next day if we had a traditional front yard garden. So we were cultivating a lot of crops that we had a very beautiful ornamental landscape in the front, and probably 2/3 of it was edible. We just called it our covert edible garden. So ornamental cabbages you can eat, a green vine ground cover from sweet potatoes. You can eat sweet potatoes, you can eat sweet potato leaves, grape vines, you can eat the grapes, you can eat the leaves. We had a variety of onions and garlic that grew in with some other ornamental flowers, and the flowers from the onions and the garlic, beautiful, and they actually looked like ornamental plants. And I would challenge you, if you drove past the house, you would never think that 75% of what was growing out front was edible, because it was very well landscaped, manicured yard. So that's what we did there in the front, and that was more of a weekend project that I could just do myself. And if we wanted to harvest that, we could. Going back to your point of, I didn't have 3 full-time minions to help me garden. So Jenise, are you still?
No.
Okay,
Brad, go. You have more pages. You look very pretty, Jenise.
Well, I gotta agree now. So just a couple of notes. So greenhouse, converting lawn to garden, fruit trees, small swales, hugelkultur, hugelkultur, and what's the name of the guy who does the wood chip gardening system?
Back to Eden. I don't. Paul something. I forgot his last name. I think it's Paul.
Yeah. So in my community, we have so many wood chips. There are tree trimming companies that cannot figure out what to do with their wood chips, and I'm sure a lot of them end up in a field somewhere or in a dump. But we also live in kind of a high desert, arid climate, right? All of that material should be going back into our yards, because we could create a microclimate here in my house, in my neighborhood, in my block, and we only have 16,000 people in town. How much of the surface area do you have to start improving before you could actually change the climate of the town by reusing wood chip mulch, right? Those things to me are, when you see Jeff Lawton doing that in the hyper-arid salted desert in the Middle East, and they can grow food there, my environment is not nearly as harsh as that. we genuinely have the potential to change the climate of our town, reusing something that's a waste product today that people are looking for a way to get rid of. That's how much power each of us have if we collectively start doing all of these little changes.
Absolutely. And by starting at your own space and showing that you can make it differently, that's how you bring your community in. And I'm sure that's what you're doing right now at your space. Yeah.
Yep.
Good. What else do you have on your list? You promised 3 pages. Go, Brad.
Well, so I said outside of house, we start to move into the neighborhood. So I think neighborhood, and we've talked about these on some of the other talks, but share everything. We should be sharing tools, food, knowledge. We have several friends now that have started raising chickens. We are not raising chickens, but we have found all kinds of things to trade for eggs. I've also got a hay field here, and this year we couldn't sell the hay for very much, but I can trade the hay to the couple that we get our organic milk from. So, we don't have to do everything ourselves. We shouldn't do everything ourselves. It should be a community. Somebody can be an expert in beekeeping, and I'll let my hay field grow, right? But just something that I haven't done here now because I'm working out of the house more, but in California, carpooling, sharing resources. Anytime we're sharing resources, we're cutting down on the amount of fuel and energy that we need. We're building community. We're making better use of the resources that we have. So let's see. That was all the notes I had on neighborhood.
Yeah, and I think I want to cycle back to how it applies to the physical house. It's like if you share resources with your neighbors, there might be a repair you don't know how to do, but your neighbor knows how to do it. And so again, you might be able to do an improvement, like put that awning on, which is going to protect you from the summer's heat, which you couldn't do by yourself. Or what happened in my case, I had a friend who was working for people, and he took down some outdoor structure, and he gifted all that wood to me, which was like 10 years old at the time, but it made a shade structure, and it has done all kinds of trellises. And, I used it in so many different ways. And that was headed to the landfill, before he got into permaculture and got the idea about community and sharing. So, yeah.
Yeah. I read a story last week about a couple who saved $6,000 on materials for their house because they were going salvaging things from Craigslist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, most of the homeowners they were salvaging from didn't have any sustainable green goals in mind. It was cheaper to let somebody take it than to pay to have it hauled off to the dump. And they saved nearly $6,000 in totally reusable building material. And they said, some of the 2x4s had bangs and bumps in them, but you're not going to see them. They're behind sheetrock. So
yeah, one of my favorite is broken concrete. I have used it to build all kinds of, patio spaces and garden paths. And that was all headed for the landfill. And I found it on Craigslist, and I even got it delivered. Again, it's cheaper for them to dump it in my driveways and to go to the dump and pay a dump fee, so it was a win-win.
Pictures of that. Do you have pictures posted?
I do have pictures. Not recently, I don't think, but I have pictures of it all in my driveway. And then it inspired other people to come and say, hey, can I have some of that? Because I see what you have done, and that looks really cool. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a good talk. I forget the name of the speaker, but a guy did a TED talk. He's a builder in Houston, and every house that he's built has been built out of, like 40 to 50% reclaimed material. And he talks about two different philosophical models. And he said the one that we've chosen is where everything needs to be the same. And if it's not the same, it's a problem in our brains, right? So if you are looking at a bunch of glass window panes and one has a crack, that's a problem. But he said if you take a little hammer and you go through and you put a crack in all of them, now it looks great, right? But he said as he started to do this with reclaimed material, he's seen the people in the neighboring houses want to start doing the same thing because it's like a pattern match, pattern recognition thing. something has to go first to reuse the broken pieces of concrete. And as more people do it, now it's the acceptable model, and it doesn't stand out, it doesn't look bad, and it changes people's thinking about these materials. Why are we going for something that's aesthetic, like fake bricks on the side of the house? Why is fake brick or fake granite or fake wood? If you want wood, get wood, right? What's the point of fake brick? So the aesthetics versus the practicality of the building materials and what we're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's like TED Talk, right? I'm trying to go and find it, and we can put it on set too.
I will send it. I'd be happy to send it to you. That's a great one.
So it's almost 10 o'clock. So do you have some really pressing pearls of wisdom you want to throw out in the last 2 minutes?
Well, no, but let me just go through what we talked about here. So the Earthship Delusion, so I think you summarized it well. You start wherever you're at, right? We don't have to get to Earthship or tiny house to start living sustainably and improving our lives. Start where we are. For maximum greenness, we want to use everything as long as we can, and figure out how to improve upon it, repair it, keep it in use, and then when it is time to retire it from our house, it can be gifted, it can be upcycled. I was even reading that now you can recycle asphalt shingles, believe it or not, and you can't do that everywhere. We don't have a facility near us, but in some of the larger facilities, even your asphalt shingles. When you do replace, use a specialist, because a lot of the technologies change very quickly. So if you update your house every 5 or 6 years, don't try to rely on your own expertise. Find somebody who's staying up to date so you can learn about milk paint, steel roofs, some of the other greener technologies that can be used. Insulate.
Yes.
We can look at ways to increase density in our existing suburban areas. Think minimally. Do we need it? Do we want it? Why are we buying it? Are we buying it because we saw a TV commercial, or we grew up thinking that's what we have to be fulfilled? Because I can tell you that's not the case. I spent 25 years trying to do that, and now I'm trying to undo that. So think about why you're getting it, if it's going to really make your life better. And then on the outside, you want to maybe summarize some of the points you brought up on the outside?
So use mechanical ways to insulate again, to weatherproof, so to speak. Use gray water. Get examples in your area to inspire community to gather around you. I was just listening. You threw me for a loop here. It's like, what? I have to think.
Trying to be inclusive. So we have the Brad Lancaster example of buying the cheapest house in a depressed neighborhood and turning it into a model showcase of permaculture and gray water reuse. The Dervais family, that is a more extreme example, but what you can actually do as far as full urban homesteading on a suburban lot near Los Angeles. Greenhouses, converting your lawns to garden. Covert gardening, so hiding your edible ornamentals in your front yard. Outdoor aquaponic systems, fruit trees, small swales, hugelkultur. Hugelkultur and wood chips are both very good carbon sinks, by the way, so they keep carbon back in the ground, helping the plants. And then as we extend out into the neighborhood, share everything, connect, and carpool.
Yes.
So I will do that.
Very good. That sounds like a really good closing to our podcast. Thank you so much, Brad. And I'm speaking for Jenise here too. Goodbye, everybody, since she can't speak. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.